I'm Dave Cawley, investigative journalist and host of the podcast Cold. In October of 1985, a woman named Cherie Warren left work at a busy Salt Lake City office
to meet her estranged husband at a downtown auto dealership.
She never made it home. Cherie's car surfaced weeks later in Las Vegas.
In the parking lot of a hotel casino.
No one knows how it got there.
Strange. It was strange.
Both Cherie's estranged husband and her boyfriend raised suspicion for investigators.
I kind of thought that he might have done something.
But no arrests were ever made. In Cold Season 3, we dig into double lives, make new connections in the case, and examine the difficulty raised by reasonable doubt.
We want answers just as much as anyone else.
They have creeps like that now too, so nothing's changed.
That's the new Cold Season 3, The Search for Cherie, now available anywhere you get your podcasts.
So, she sends you this picture of Trish.
Tish.
Sorry. I didn't walk her to her car. But that was your first experience with alcohol. And did you continue drinking alcohol?
Oh, yeah. So now that opened that door. So now a good idea is not just paying bills, but a really good idea is mix those babies. And so now I'm traveling a lot in the medical device arena all over the country. Conferences regularly held in New York, New Orleans, Atlanta, and L.A. And that was back in the day when I was wining and dining docks when it was legal. The Stark laws, I think, is what prohibits it now. But
it was around 2000 when that happened.
Yeah. So I can wine these docks a little bit and buy them dinner and just.
Oh, and you guys took the docks out to fancy places and lots of booze flowing, lots of steaks. Nice restaurants, yeah.
So you were just doing what your job asked you to do.
Yeah, but I'm going over the top on it, and included in those nice drinks and dinners would be girly places. So we're going to the girly bar stuff, and now I enter another realm of violating of my own values, because now I'm finding myself in the arms of other women. Feeling the tremendous shame of that, the only way to manage that is to not feel it, which is to self-medicate that. And I'm just I don't know what's going on, but I'm just caught up in this vicious cycle. Still all along pretending when I go back to Salt Lake. I had a rule. I think it started out to be like a 500-mile rule. If I left Salt Lake, you all heard this before. 500 miles I drink, and that narrowed down to where it was in my freezer,
Yeah.
And trying to hide it from my wife and kids. And I didn't do a good job at that. So in 2001, I pick up my first DUI. And there was the first catalytic event. Looking back, I've observed in my life, and as I've done this over the last 10 years in the recovery community, there's catalytic events seem to be a big deal. And most of us aren't fortunate enough
We're
just to
oblivious
experience
to them.
one. Yeah. So the catalytic event number one was the DUI. I remember telling Kelly, I'm coming from Wendover. And I get pulled over, and I'm drunk and pills. And called Kelly from the jail and said, I got a problem here, and will you come pick me up? And please do me a favor and don't bring the boys. At that point, our two older boys were, Adam would have been a teenager. And so, okay. So I wait. They got me in Woolley jail. And I get released to her custody. And as I go out to the car, catalytic event number 2, part of number 1, 1A, Adam's in the car. She did that on purpose, and she wanted to try and help me feel the pain. We didn't know this whole arena, and looking back, she did some wonderful things to help me find this bottom, so to speak. And looking back, she did some things that we might do differently had we to do it again. But that was I remember that vividly. Like, what am I doing? And Adam's going, "What are you doing, Dad?" So that didn't end. And,
so you saw yourself through your son's eyes.
Yeah. So 2004, the back pain's getting pretty bad. Family is now really concerned. They know what's going on. They just don't know the extent of it. And we get a family friend therapist, a guy named Harold Brown, involved, and he tells me and the family, you really can't look at any treatment until you can uncover the source of that pain and see if you can't remedy it. So in 2004, we decided, let's have surgery. And I agreed. They were going to cage, fuse, and screw L5S1. And I remember going to that surgery with two thoughts. One was I've had friends and a brother included, my brother Scott, have that surgery, and it made it worse. Oh. It didn't get better. And then the second thought was, what if it does work?
Yeah, I won't have an excuse to use these pills or get them.
Then what do I do?
Yeah.
So have the surgery, and as fate would have it, I knew that night in the hospital something was different. It was still painful, but the pain wasn't the one that radiated. It was that pain that a bunch of guys just beat the crap out of your back. And I'm, of course, it's hard to feel a lot of pain because you can't see this on radio, but I'm in the hospital bed clicking this button going, what's going on? This doesn't seem to be working.
Where's the morphine?
Yeah. Where's the morphine? Nurse, this isn't working. Sure, it's set on every 3 minutes, and you're pushing it every 3 seconds. You got to let it go. That's just tells you where my anxiety was and my tolerance to opiates were. So that heals, and I got no more pain, and that was the last time I've touched any opiates of narcotics like that. Heroin would come a little bit later, but so then I pick up gambling. I still haven't dealt with what's going on in my heart. Still haven't dealt with communication, with shame. I haven't dealt with any of that.
I'm curious, just as since you mentioned that, what's the state of the relationship with your wife and kids? Because I know that even if you're not out and out fighting, when a person is so high all the time, you're detached emotionally. And so, here the two of you are trying to raise a family. What's the quality of the connection between you and your wife at this point?
She is an A personality. If you've done any color personality profiling.
She's a type A.
She's type A. She's red. Mm-hmm. Most of us have multiple colors in the spectrum of red, white, blue, and yellow. She has one. She is only red. Okay. I have a little white, I think it was,
and yellow,
and a lot of yellow.
Yeah.
I was all yellow because we did this in Pinnacle Recovery.
Did you? You were all yellow.
All yellow.
Oh, interesting.
And my understanding of that test is taking red and yellow as examples. Red has
brown.
Red has in their world they have one color. They have two colors, black and white. They see the world as black or white. Yeah. Yellow, on the other hand, has one color, just different shades of gray.
Yeah.
The mantra of a yellow is life is a party, and I'm the host. Mm-hmm. And so Kelly was able to hold the family component together because of that strong, dominant tenacious red personality. Yeah. The relationship with the kids, you make a great point. And it would come back years later, I would uncover about our younger two daughters. I tried to engage with the kids. I'm their soccer coach, and yet I remember once being let off the soccer field by a police escort because I was acting out of, I didn't like the official's call. We were getting the crap kicked out of us. I'm just over the top. Yeah. The boys are, at this point, teenagers, late teenagers almost, and the girls are just young. There's 8 years difference between 2 and 3. So they didn't know what was going on. They knew something was amiss, but they didn't know the specifics. Adam and Chad, the older kids, knew a little bit more, but even they didn't know the extent. So Adam gets, in 2000, where are we? 2004, surgery works. I'm gambling now, and I'm going through lots of money, and I'm let go. I'm no longer employed in the medical device arena.
Because of the gambling?
Because my unreliability. Okay. Unreliability. I was just getting drunk and missing. I missed a surgery where I was to bring the heart valves to McCady Hospital.
That's a problem.
And the patient's all there.
Everybody's there. But
everybody's
the
heart there. Valves. No heart valves, and they can't do it. And you can do that once and keep your job, but you can't do it twice. Yeah. And I did that. So now I'm really not employable in that community. I've been blackballed in it. And I don't really care because I got other stuff in my mind.
I'm going to make my money gambling.
Yeah, whatever. It was just terrible. I'm a pretty good gambler. The problem with gambling in a casino is
the house always wins.
Well, I'm sober. I can beat those guys on Texas Hold'em. But when they start passing out the free booze, and I'm all in. And some guy with pocket kings goes, I'll call that. And then I'm out thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. So in 2006, it's getting bad. my son Chad, our second
I like the
son,
fact that you just said it's getting bad.
It's getting bad.
Because the people at home are listening and goes, it's been
already
bad for a
bad.
long time. But just for Christian, he's like, it's getting bad.
It's bad.
that tells you the extent of my denial.
Yeah.
And my delusion. So in 2006, our 17-year-old second son, Chad, had saved enough money. We had an agreement, Kelly and I, kids, if you save money for a used car, we will match the money and get you your first used car. Chad has about $3,000 that he'd saved, and we'd picked out a car. He gives me his debit card on a Friday afternoon with the PIN number, and I decided, well, it's a good idea to just drive right past the car lot alone and headed to Wendover, where over that next 3 days,
So you're going to turn that $3,000 into.
I don't even know what I was thinking,
Yeah.
but it was just insane.
To be honest, you weren't thinking.
I wasn't. Yeah, I wasn't. And so over that weekend, Friday night, Saturday, and into Sunday, they could get on the internet and see that money being gone, but they couldn't do anything about it back in that day electronically.
Yeah.
They saw deductions come out of that, withdrawals come out of that $300 at a time.
Where did they think you were?
They knew where I was.
Oh, they
knew where I was.
You'd just taken off.
Yeah, they knew where I was because they could see where the withdrawals were being withdrawn from at the casino in Wendover until that party ended when it was zero. That was late Sunday afternoon. I remember driving home, and I'm worried, but I'm still a little tipsy. But I know I'm gonna face the dragon a little bit on this. Pull up into the driveway, open the garage, pull up, and Kelly, my wife, stands at the doorway entrance of the house in the garage. She's got her hands on her hips, which is a sign of this is not going to be good.
Yeah.
And so I remember getting out of the car and walking past Kelly and said, hey, I don't want to fight anymore. I'm just going to grab a few things and go stay at my mom and dad's house. They were out of the country for 2 years, and they had a basement apartment I could stay in. And this is catalytic event number 2. She says to me, take it all. I'm done. And my first thought was, fine, I didn't want to be here anyways, which was just delusional. That was my value. I love that family. I love her. So I grabbed what I could and went to my mom and dad's house. There was a terrible neighborhood for a guy like me who's living in a lot of shame, self-loathing, and guilt because the neighbor to the east was a guy named Robert D. Hills. Yeah, you're laughing because you know who that is. It gets worse. The neighbor to the west, and that's the side of the house I would have to go to get to the basement apartment, a guy named David Bednar. And so I remember...
Apostles on both sides.
Yeah. I remember coming one night from Pioneer Park. Excuse me. I've left out an important factor. It was at that point where I was introduced by one of the neighbors there to a new coping skill, crack cocaine. And so, and I remember my first experience with crack was, oh, where have you been? This is the solution to all of my problems. Everything went away on that stupid pipe. And looking back, I've joked, everything did go away. Everything went away.
Brain cells, the whole thing.
Everything. And so I remember one night I come from Pioneer Park, and this is 2006 now, still. And because crack beat me up fast. I managed alcohol and opiates for many, many years, but crack would beat me up in a matter of months. Yeah. So I had what I wanted in my pocket. I'm focused. My brain's going giddy. This is going to be fun. And I go to the end of the house, turn right to go downstairs, and I hear off to my left, and it's just about dark, not quite, Christian. And I turn over to the left, and there's Elder Bednar flipping burgers.
And for the listeners, explain who Elder Bednar is.
He's he's a big leader in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Right. He's an apostle.
Yeah. And he says, hey, why don't you come over and have a burger? Not a chance that's ever going to happen, right?
I got crack in my pocket.
That's not going to happen. And I'm not going to let him look me in the eyes and have this little interview that ecclesiastical guys and clinicians have without words being spoken.
Look at you and he knows, right?
Nah, not going to have that. So I excuse myself and anyway, I'm now at this point I'm not working, and I'm funding this habit of cocaine by stealing family stuff. And I'll fast forward a little. I'll make this part quick a little bit here. Eventually, after doing that, my mom had Yarrow at the house, and the Punch-Ups loved this Italian porcelain, I think it
Right.
is.
Yeah.
And
that's expensive stuff.
And guns. It is. So family got wind of it, and they ended up saying, you can't stay here anymore. And so now I'm homeless. And I'm down at Pioneer Park, and I see 2 North Salt Lake cops roll up. and I have a pretty good idea. They're out of their jurisdiction. Long story made short there is they would arrest me for theft and forgery, where I would spend a year and a half in jail. 6 months up. I was sentenced. I'm new to jail. Our family's new to jail. We don't know that system at all. We do now. But I had multiple charges everywhere. Pawn shops were everywhere. Davis County had sentenced me to a year in their drug program while I was going through some legal stuff at ADC at Salt Lake County Jail. So the thing should have been a year, but because things were stalled, I ended up doing a year and a half on a year sentence. And had catalytic event number 3 in jail. And I don't mean to offend any non-LDS folks. It's just my story, so if it bugs you, then
tell it.
Take a hike. Yeah. But I'm in jail in ADC, and I'm waiting to be transferred to Davis County because every day I'm in Salt Lake is one day longer. I got to do a year at Davis County.
So you want to get there.
I want to get
it
there.
Over with.
I want to get there. And I meet up with a guy named Jeff Carter, who's finishing a sentence, and he's an older guy. I'm 48 at this time in jail. It's a young man's game, and people would leave us alone. We would play chess, and one day we'd play, and I'm spiritually bankrupt. I think if there is a God, I think there is one, but God, you suck at your job. Look at me, man. I mean, you suck.
Yeah.
And so I'm just bankrupt spiritually. Family's mad at me. I hate them. They're the ones that turn me in. Wife's not having to do with me. I'm alone. No money on my books. Nobody knows what that is in our family. So I'm talking to Jeff, and he starts talking about God. And anyway, we're interrupted one morning from a guy from Honduras says, "Hey, tell me about this God thing you're talking about all the time." And I remember this is how spiritually bankrupt I was, saying, "Hey, dude, we're playing chess. Walk on." Carter says to him, "Hey, wait, come here. Gave him a book and said, "Hey, why don't you read this book? And if you have any questions, come back." And I'm thinking that you're a genius because that book's called the Book of Mormon. There's not a chance this guy will ever come back. I was wrong. The very next morning, he comes back and asks questions, interrupts our chess game again. And the long story made short there is over the next almost 4 months, he would come every day and we would start talking about God and Christ. And I sensed something was different because I started remembering things I had memorized 20-plus years
on your mission.
On a mission. And I'm not that smart. I know there's an authorship to that a little bit of some power greater than myself recalling things. Each day I would finish this by saying, "Hey, you guys, I probably won't see you tomorrow. They're going to roll me up," only to Groundhog Day for about 6 months. On one day, the catalytic event happens when Jeff and I are talking, what are we going to teach Jonathan, this guy? And we don't know. I don't know. We come up with this idea of the atonement. I remember thinking, cool, I know everything there is to know about the atonement. And so I prepare in my cell that night this dissertation on the atonement and give it to him the next morning. And I'm giving him good stuff, talking about Christ, his experiences, miracles, events in a garden, Gethsemane, and ultimately died on the cross. I thought it was really good stuff. And I'm finished, and Jonathan leans over, puts his hand on mine over this metal table, grommeted to the concrete floor in the jail, and asks this question, Christian, in that Honduran accent, why? Why did he do those things? My first thought was, what are you, stupid? I just told you. And that's when I had this event. It was as if my grandfather was in the room, and he might have been. I didn't see anybody, but I felt the presence of a man's arms on my shoulder and says, "Christian, this question he asks you, you think you know the answer, but you don't. And until you know the answer to that simple question, your life's going to be difficult, son." So I listened for a minute to what was told to my heart and my mind, and I said to Jonathan, this Jesus did this because he loves me, a liar, a cheat, a thief, and an addict. And if I would look to just change my ways, all of these things would be forgotten. Want to guess when I was rolled up?
Next day.
That night.
Oh, that night.
That night. Never would see Jonathan again.
I got chills.
Never saw him again. So I go and finish my sentence, get out of jail, go back to Kelly. She starts visiting. Family starts reconnecting, except that son whose money I stole. He had nothing to do with me. I had a son that was on a mission while I was in jail. He came home. He's, "Dad, what's going on?" And we didn't tell him how bad it was because we thought there was nothing that could do but hinder his ability to do what he wanted to do. So get out of jail. go back home to Kelly, and quickly revert back to coping with the stresses of that marriage and life by self-medicating it back to crack. And she's it's not working anymore. And so that's about the time when in 2000, now we're at 2009, where it's not working bad and I'm missing out some stuff, but it's okay. Gets to the point where for the first time, I've been to treatment 4 or 5 times before for family, kids, mom and dad, siblings, my wife. But in this 2009, I'm going because for the first time I realized I want a family, but I don't have it and I can't do anything about it. And I've tried to stop. I can't. So I checked myself into a treatment center, spent 83 days, and I loved it. During that time, we had family process work where I reconnected with my wife. One wonderful event with my oldest teenage daughter at the time, Sarah, who's now a substance use disorder counselor and at social work, University of Utah social work to be a master's level, LCSW. I remember in that process group, they invited Sarah to come down, and it was in front of clients and family members. And I remember going into that thinking, I've just really inconvenienced my kids and my wife. I haven't really done anything but that. Until the counselor, he puts us so we're hand to hand, knee to knee, looking each other's eyes. And he says to my daughter, Sarah, who's 17 at the time, he says, Sarah, tell your dad how it felt when he lied to you, when he manipulated you, when he stole from you. Up to that point, I'm thinking I've just inconvenienced her, until with tears streaming down her eyes and mine, she expressed how much pain that caused her. I didn't want to do that to her. I love her. I didn't want to do that to her. The beautiful thing about that experience is she got a chance to get that pain out. I got a chance to hear it and, more importantly, feel it. And it put Sarah and I on this trajectory where we could go through the recovery process now side by side together. They weren't asking Sarah to trust her dad. She would trust me if and when she ever got enough ammunition, if you will, to trust me. Because when she did choose to trust me, it opened her up again to being hurt. But it one by one, with the exception of Chad, we connected and we went through that process. And so I get out of treatment. 83 days. I'm the poster child. I love residential. It was really fun. If you can get over the 18-year-old nonsense when you're a 48-year-old guy, it was magnificent. Get out of that. Go home now to Kelly again. And she has on a napkin 4 deal breakers. I still have the napkin, and you know I do, Kelly. Handwritten deal breakers. If you're going to come home, here's what you have to abide by. 4 deals. First one, can't use or drink. That's fair. Second one, you got to get a job. That's fair. Third one, you got to get a driver's license, which is fair because I've been driving without a driver's license, and for a guy who's on probation, that's a problem. Yeah. The fourth one, I still chuckle to this day. The 4th deal breaker on that napkin. You want to guess?
I have no idea.
Molly Mormon gal.
Gotta go to church.
You gotta go to church. And don't you people that are LDS, don't you turn your thing off yet, because I'm still active LDS, but I remember going sarcastically in my brain, thank you, Kelly. Oh, thank you, Jesus. If only I had gone to church, all this never would have happened, you know. Sarcasm again, sorry. But so after we're into it 6 days, and a guy offers me a job, a dear friend, Carl Tobler, offers me a job.
I know Carl Tobler.
Do you really?
Yeah. Sings for the Mormon Tabernacle Choir.
Used to could, Carl. And,
yeah.
He owns a mattress company, Mattress Warehouse, and he said, Smith, and he's a dear friend, I'll hire you, but you got to get a driver's license. Okay, so we figured out what we had to do to get the driver's license, and we figured it would be about $40 to reinstate it in the paperwork. So I go to the Taylorsville DMV. This is now 6 days after 83 days of residential. I'm driving my daughter's car, Sarah, I'm driving her car, go to the DMV, give her the clerk the paperwork, and she goes, hey, Mr. Smith, I don't need your money. I do need, however, you to go to the courthouse and get them to give you a paper to sign off that you can drive, that you're doing something about you probably have signed some of those DMV things. I don't know what they're called. But so I'm smiling, and but I'm smiling on the outside. But when she said court, the last time I went to a court, they kept me for a year and a half. I am over the top stressed inside, but I'm smiling on the outside. So I said, okay, great, super. And so I start walking to the car in that parking lot, and my phone rings. BlackBerry or Blueberry, I forget what that's called, that phone.
Blackberry.
Why were you laughing like that? Anyway, BlackBerry phone.
Blueberry's a fruit.
Yeah. BlackBerry, thank you. But BlackBerry's a fruit.
Yeah, go ahead.
So BlackBerry. So the phone rings, and hello, and it's Kelly. How you doing? Oh, I'm doing good. I'm not doing good, right?
Yeah, you're stressed.
I am over the top stressed. I'm scared to death. I'm good. I just got to go to the courthouse and have them sign some stuff. It's all good. Okay, all right, super. Hang up. Get into the car. The monkeys in my head hold a committee meeting, and one of them suggests, you got $40 and you're pretty stressed. Maybe instead of going down to the courthouse right now, you just go downtown for a minute, alleviate that stress, and then go to the courthouse. So we take a vote, and I'm certain it was unanimous, the monkeys. So I'm now driving around Pioneer Park because I know that gig back in the day, you didn't have to get your car. Meet eyes with somebody who's going to do what we need. The phone rings again. Hello. It's my counselor, Jason Webb. Clearly my wife had sent something. So only a crackhead can appreciate what's going on here. Hello. And Jason goes, are you okay? Yeah, I'm good. Hold on just a second, Jason. You have $40 worth of cocaine. You have $40 for the white. Nope, doing really good. Yeah, 40. So I exchanged that deal on the phone with my counselor instead of having all these opportunities to say I'm scared to death, my pride and everything. So that was supposed to be a couple of hours. It turned into 10 days.
No.
Sold the car that I was driving for dope. The phone was worth some money. Had a watch on me that was worth some money. Longest bender I've ever been on where nobody heard from me. Another catalog event, the last catalog event.
Before we get to that, you're listening to Christian Smith from Cycles of Change and his amazing story here on Project Recovery. We're going to take a second, and we'll be right back.
Two friends taking pictures of the rising full moon on a summer night.
Two teenage kids doing what teenage kids do.
When a stranger with a gun and a death wish changed everything.
It was violent, it was senseless, and I will never understand it, I will never accept it.
I'm Amy Donaldson, and unfortunately, we're all too familiar with stories about how violence shatters lives. But what we rarely see is how they are rebuilt. In a new podcast, The Letter, we relive tragedy, but only so we can hear the rest of the story. The struggle to reclaim lives, the realities of grief, and the possibilities of forgiveness.
I believe in miracles. Sometimes I thought, there are no miracles. Yeah, there are, and this is a big one.
Follow The Letter at theletterpodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
So this is the fourth?
Yeah, I'm a slow learner, man. So the party's over. That 10-day bender is ended. There's no more dope. There's no more way to fund it. And I was crashing in a place in North Salt Lake on the west side off Redwood Road. Used their landline to check my voicemail. Obviously, it was full. And but particularly Jason Webb, my counselor and dear friend now, I listened to his voicemails. The first couple were, hey, this is Jason. I'm concerned about you. Call me. It crescendoed to the middle of the week to about as assertive, as aggressive as he can get. Hey, this is ridiculous. But he's an LDS guy that doesn't say that. So this is ridiculous. Call me. But the last message he left was the message that saved my life and the final catalytic event. This is the message he left. Christian, it's Jason. Have I told you I love you lately? That message gave me enough courage to pick up the phone and say, I'm not in a good place. Not fear of reprisal and judgment. I'm just not in a good place. He just opened that door by saying, I'm not judging you, brother. I just love you. And so I called him and I went back for 30 more days, and that was February 4th, 2010. During that time, my brain lights went on where I figured out it never worked for me. That was supposed to be $40 in an hour or so, turned into 10 days. And I had looked back and looked back and looked back. Not one time did it ever work. And so my brain light went on and said, maybe you ought to just figure a different way, brother. And I made a commitment that day. I'm not doing it anymore. I'm married to a woman who's a strong personality. I got 4 kids. Now we got 5.5 grandkids. I got a lot of stress in my life. But I made the commitment. I'm not picking up. So we communicate better. Kelly, I say stuff like, Kelly, did you purposely try to offend me with what you just said? And she goes, no, what are you talking about? We don't mind read anymore. We spend more quality time. I'm more open, honest. The gifts of recovery for me have been, I thought this God I knew as a kid loved me contingent upon my doing all the things all the time. Right. And if I wasn't, then out of the pool. Smith, get the hell out of the pool. You're out of the pool. When the God I understand now that was given to me through recovery and 12 steps in AA, the God I know now says this. And the light bulb went on some years early into recovery when I'm still not sure about it. A guy says, Smith, you got this problem with God. You have 4 kids. Is there anything your kids could do to stop you from loving them? And I thought, no. He said, you sure? And so I thought, well, I've raised 4 teenagers, and Sarah is a pain in the butt. But no, there's nothing. I'm familiar with frustration and disappointment, but nothing they could do to stop me from loving them. No. And then he said the magic words. Do you think God could feel that way about God's kids? And I'm going, holy cow. That feels like that might be true. And if it is true, I could have a relationship with that God. You mean you're just going to love me because I'm your kid, not because I do or don't do anything?
Unconditional.
Unconditional love. First time I felt it. To this day, I still feel it. I'm not perfect. I'm a mediocre husband at best. I'm an okay dad. I'm a good grandpa. But I make a lot of mistakes. So I get into this recovery. Early on, people are saying you ought to get into the business and market, and so I find that, and I love it. Worked for Steps, love those guys. Jorgensen was awesome to help me, and then I started having this sensation of you ought to open your own, and I'm going, I don't have that kind of money. Anyway, so I ended up opening one after years of pondering and looking for places. And the cool thing is the partners, the guys that partnered with me, were my sons.
Oh, wow.
That is Adam and Chad. Chad, for the first year and a half, if I walked into a room Chad was in, he'd walk out of the room. I stole his money. He was hurt. And I don't blame him. But if you ask Chad, he'll tell you he was over that 4 years is how long it took for him to get over it. Then he loves me enough and that connection and trust enough that we decided to open Inspire Addiction Recovery. We did that for 2 years. It was magnificent. We had great connection. I think the opposite of addiction for me, a lot of it is just good, pure, healthy connections.
Amen.
And Chad and Adam and my kids, we have great connections that were built. So we opened Inspire, and it was purchased by another company 2 years later and my sons weren't working full-time. They had their own gigs. This was my dream, and they have, one of them's an accountant, the other's an SEO guy, the other's an IT guy, business guy. These are good, wise guys, and I'm not. I just have a passion for recovery. So we opened it. It was magnificent, and then it was acquired almost 3 years into it by another company, which was cool because it gave Adam and Chad, they weren't getting paid, but it gave them a little bit of money. It wasn't life-changing money, but it was seed money for something they might want to do going down the road. And so I do that, and I just love the recovery. Kelly and I, my wife and I, people have got to be asking, what's that status?
Yeah.
Well, here's how sick my wife is. We celebrate 38 years of marriage the end of this month. And that really, and don't be offended, people that might have heard that, because there's truth to what I just said. For her to put up with what she did, there's some sickness to that. But I thank God that she did, because we're better together. We bring things different to the dynamic and to the relationship. The spontaneity that I bring and this organization and clear-headedness that she brings, and we're better together, and we both have a message to the recovery community. We speak a lot. So those people that took offense because I said my wife's sick, get over it. She is, and I'm grateful for it. So am I. We're all sick. I don't judge. We've all learned that we don't judge as much. We just love. 15 years ago, I'd have been the guy with my family walking to a jazz game and seeing some guy down on his luck on the street begging for money, and we'd have said, get a job. Now we go, how can we help, man? Because the drugs and alcohol have nothing to do with the drugs and alcohol. nor does sex and pornography have anything to do with sex and pornography. It's the mismanagement of these really, really painful feelings and emotions and trauma.
Yeah.
They're just symptoms. And so the wonderful thing about, I wouldn't wish what I went through or what Kelly and I and our kids have gone through on anybody. I would not wish it on anybody. But your listeners need to know with all my heart, I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Wow.
It's how I became acquainted with myself, my kids, my wife, and the God of my understanding. That is my story.
It's how you got to Sobertown.
Sobertown.
That's right. I mean, Dr. Matt, I just kept sitting here and listening and going, wow. But with such passion and empathy and courage, your story is truly one to talk about. And I think it's going to inspire a lot of people out there, not only for the addicts, for family members as well.
It's a beautiful story because, you, as a family, you didn't give up on each other. And I think that's the beautiful outcome of it. Whatever it takes, I guess, for people to learn that lesson that we don't judge and that love really does make the difference in everything. Whatever it takes, it's worth it when we can learn that lesson. And Jason leaving you that message, obviously Kelly loving you through all of this and you returning the love to her and your kids, it's beautiful. And when we love each other, that connection can work miracles in people's lives. And so I appreciate very, very much that you've really told us the whole story.
On a side note, Kelly did us a solid because they were supposed to be going down to St. George for vacation.
Yeah.
And she told Christian, I think you should go do the podcast.
Kelly sounds amazing. Thank you, Kelly.
Get off her leg, you guys.
Hey, you've been listening to Project Recovery. If you know somebody who needs some help, have them do what I did. Give Pinnacle Recovery Center a call. Christian, thank you very much. Dr. Matt, always a pleasure. Josh, wonderful job. You're listening to Project Recovery, a KSL podcast.
The contents of this program are for informational purposes only. The program is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician, licensed therapist, or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you've heard on this program. KSL does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, physicians, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned on the program. Reliance on any information provided on the program is solely at your own risk.